What needs to change? Where are you in contrast to where you want to go? People have a hard time giving truth to where they currently are. Based on what we know from the past, we tend to put our own twist on current reality. Almost like a distortion filter, we speculate about what's really going on. What happens when we do this is we cannot establish a true distance between where we are and where we want to go. Similar to taking a trip, if I said I wanted to go to Madrid, Spain, but I couldn't tell you exactly where I am, how do I know what airport to take off from? How do I know what point to begin to plan my trip? Same thing when we're planning our life, our business, when we're planning our creations that we want to create. One thing you'll have to come to terms with in the creative process is getting that the truth is the truth as you see it. It is never the absolute truth. It is a subjective, narrow version of the truth. And that version of the truth can be good enough. Because if you base planning on that version of the truth, your plans will become your teacher, assuming you have a learner mindset. And therefore, the lack of absoluteness is excusable because you learn through experimentation. We use something called the Copets analysis. It is a tool that we've created to evaluate better your present situation. It's a window pane that we help you put on your eyes. You look through a series of primers or reference points to observe current reality. Oftentimes when I ask entrepreneurs, where are you going? And they can tell me, they can articulate that relatively well. Now many of them haven't written it down, but a lot of individuals will say, this is exactly what I want to create. And I look and see if it's measurable, if it's challenging, and if it's bold, if it's exciting and it's inspiring to them. And it's time-bound. It has some sense of when it's planned on coming to fruition. Once they tell me this, then I say, well, great. What is current reality? Where are you, really, in contrast? And they become tongue-tied. And they start telling me a bunch of symptoms. They start coming to terms with some answers that are not even root causes. They are almost symptoms of surface issues. So what this is about is looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats right in front of you. Exactly where you are. It's looking at contrasts. And this is the stock and trade of the creator. They're looking at where they are in contrast to where they want to go. What's their true distance? The Copets analysis is an acronym. Copets. C-O-P-E-T-S. Competition, organization, personal, economical, technological, and structural. We've organized our primer reference points around these 6 particular organizing ideas. So as you put on your window pane of present situation observance, let's begin. And let's begin by first contrasting this year over last year using a series of metrics. And the reason I say you should do this is it will tell you if you've done the initial step of converting your vision, your long-term, into a series of metrics. If you have done that, then you're prepared to enter the Copets analysis. By looking at last year to this year, it forces you to think about what sort of comparison points you're going to need to look at. Gross revenue, customer satisfaction. Are you going to look at growth, recognition, developments, market share? What exactly is your outlook? What exactly is your criteria? Well, if you don't have a vision, then your criteria is not established with any sense of ground. So you may need to turn this off and go back to the first step, back in Pioneering Beyond Limits, and articulate a vision of what you want to create. Now, let's get started. Assuming that you've done that, write down a couple of facts about what you see and compare last year to this year. Take the last 12 months and then go 12 months before and do a comparison and evaluation. What happened? What took place? What changed? What didn't? And you can look at a number of different things, but go with whatever comes up. Second, go back to your vision elements. All the elements that are measurable so that your vision can be facilitated. For example, like I said, if it is being financially independent, or if it's creating an autopilot business, or if it's creating a level of quality of life from your business, maybe you want to measure the number of free days, or maybe you want to measure the quality of those free days, the time that you take to recharge your batteries. Or maybe you want to track the number of travel and leisure trips and time periods that you give yourself. Or in business, maybe you want to track the cell phone bills that you have because you know you're getting interrupted more because of a lack of systemization if you're constantly getting beaten down on your cell phone. Or maybe you want to count the number of emails or how busy your inbox is. Or maybe you want to count the number of mail pieces that actually come in and you want to reduce the complexity and get to simplicity. Maybe you want to count the number of hours in a day that you spend on your unique talents and abilities, the areas that you have the most fun with and you're most passionate about. So what are the areas where you're going to keep score? Maybe it's the number of new clients. Maybe it's the number of current clients. Maybe it's gross revenue. Maybe it's net profit. There are a multitude of things that make your vision measurable. Maybe it's your stress level and you need to measure blood pressure. All these things that allow you to bring a metric to your vision. Please make sure that you've done that. Otherwise, the rest of this will not make sense. So reunite with those metrics and your original vision elements. Now, looking at those elements, and if you formulated some goals, that's excellent. For example, if I am looking to take my metric to a goal, I might say, well, I'd like to create 150 free days next year. Or if I had a goal on my cell phone, I would like to create a bill 50% less monthly. Or if it's my net worth that I'm measuring to become financially independent, maybe I'd like to increase that by 30% next year. So naturally, out of metricizing, for lack of a better word, your vision elements, goals begin to subtly, naturally, effortlessly appear. You can begin to craft and construct your goals. Now let's look at your present situation. Enough about all the preliminary work. I'm just doing review here. There are a number of areas that you might want to look at in contrast to your goals. And so I'm going to give you a number of primers. When you're looking back on the year before, and you're doing your comparison analysis, and then you're looking at where you actually are, how about your employees' abilities? 1 through 10, each employee. How capable are they of doing the work? Your mission. Is your mission a driving force in the company? Your mission is a core purpose as to why you're in business. Is it visible? Is it visible to your staff? Is it on the shelf, on the wall, or is it something that's actually causing mobile action in your organization? Is it a centralizing charter that everyone is geared around? Are you making decisions from your mission based on changes in your industry, changes in the body of your management, changes in your philosophy, personal growth and professional growth? Does your mission need to change? How about your values? Review your values once again. If you haven't articulated them, what are 4 or 5 core values that have endured the test of time? They're the organizing values. They represent what you stand for individually and as a team. And there's a commonality between these values that we're all standing firm on these values without compromise. Have those values shifted? Do you need to relook those values? Do they require some optimization? Should they be redefined again? Should they be reinstated again? Are those values driving decisions currently in your organization? How about your competitor performance? How do you stack up? What are the categories that you could compare to? What are the numeric categories, the financial categories, the management categories, the style categories? What are the comparison analyses? Your technology. What's the present situation with your technology? How has it shifted? How have the economic conditions driven you to make decisions to stay on top of the technology requirements? Your communication technologies, your information storage technologies, your pipeline management technology, database technology. All of these technologies, what's going on? What's your present situation? And what is relevant in this area to getting to where you want to go in your vision? One of the things I'd like you to pay attention to as you go through this primer activity is do not change anything that is irrelevant to getting your vision. Change should not be suited for the sake of change. Initiate changes and formalize new actions, new habits, and new initiatives that are relevant to your vision. Again, that's what the primer work is for, is to get you putting a window pane on what areas might have something to do with the elements that you've assigned in your vision. Suboptimizing systems and high variation of business systems. Are you flying from the hip pocket in your business? Is it structured? Is there a high degree of variation? Do you see a higher degree of mistakes from year to year? Is this something that you can go to work on, and you can use your time to stabilize these systems by putting workflows together? I'll get more into this in a few minutes. Any generic management or marketing or financial or economic roadblocks that you see that you're facing from where you are now. Inadequacies of resources, investments in key useful activities and relationships. What about money, time? Inadequate support systems for delegation and execution. How is your support system? What's the present situation there? How about your value proposition? Is that something that requires some examination? Now, I've given you a broad brush of many different things that you could be looking at, but I'd like to get more specific at this point and go into the personal, Copet, P, the personal side, specifically your habits. We're going to be looking at your habits, your organization, and your structure, your systems. So, your personal side. This has to do with the fact that if you change, obviously some things will change around you because you're changing your thinking, you're changing the way you're operating, you're changing your behavior in direct relevance to your vision. What about your organization levels? One fact is you are 100% disciplined to your own habits. I learned this long ago in that people don't need more discipline, they just need to pay attention to the habits that are misleading them. And there are certain habits that are obviously working for you. So in the organization zone, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities do you have to perform better? Where are you unorganized? Are you organized to create what you want? Sales methods. Do you have a bulletproof sales method? Is this an area that ties directly into you creating your vision? Would this be a pinpointed change effort that you could dramatically improve or optimize to reach your vision? Listening and communication. Is this an area? What about the assumptions that you make about what other people do? Are you really confirming that meaning is truly understood when another person mentions something to you? What's your statement to question ratio? Do you ask more questions in statements? What would be normal to you? Are you in your way by saying too many things if you're a sales performer before you should? Do you prematurely elaborate in the sales dimension? You have one mouth and two ears. What about your style, your personal style? Is this something that may be in your way? If you're offending people with your style, this may be something you may want to look at. But most of the time, you don't need to sell out or be liked by people. Creating what you want is different than changing who you are to a certain degree. You can be who you are and recognize what you tend to do and come up with better remedies so that you don't change, based on the premise that leopards don't change their spots. But you are aware enough of what you do to where you can choose environments that play better to your strengths, not to your weaknesses, and team up with people that can offset your weaknesses. This is called unique teamwork. Personal change takes a long time. Personal change is the long-term change effort. It has the shortest leverage, and it costs the most. Now, you'd think that as a coach, I might advocate that personal change should come first. Not true. I'm all about you selecting in better environments that play to your strengths, as well as creating teamwork to allow you to really shine where you need to shine and manage those weaknesses that you shouldn't be spending your time on or correcting. Nevertheless, there still are several areas that you still may need to take action on. Let's go through a couple more. What about your punctuality habits? Is this an area that's keeping you from being referable? If you're looking to increase your income and buy more free time, are you looking to improve your punctuality? People who are on time tend to earn more respect. They also tend to be more referable and reliable. Is this impeding your credibility? Your leadership style. Are you a tyrant? Do you feel the need to push harder because you're not in control? Or are you an enabling leader? Does your style lend itself to the type of organization that you want to create? Or are you a disempowering person who takes people's abilities away? because you don't demand much from them? Are you overly helpful? Do you rush to people's aid and take away their power to create what they want in their own life? Or are you an individual that sets boundaries with people and helps people become better by coming up with their own solutions to their own problems? Your gratitude levels. Are you showing the degree of appreciation that you might relevant to your vision? Is this an action item that you may want to look at and put some energy into? How adaptable are you? Are you strict? Are you inflexible? Or are you adaptable? It's been said that one of the best qualities of high performers is that they're very adaptable in different situations. They tend to think on their feet, but they blend in quickly into different groups, conversations, institutions, and problems that need to be solved. They're very adaptable in this situation. They feel a sense of clearance and release to trust themselves enough to jump to their feet and play. Are you adaptable? Is this an area that would enable you to release your vision to come into being? Your preparation levels. Many of us in business get so caught up in what we're doing that we actually make choices to fire, ready, and then aim later. This hurts us. What about ready, aim, fire? Are you really doing the right things to prepare yourself to perform? Do you have a system for preparing yourself better? Do you use your time properly to prepare your items in advance? Do you prepare for a sales call and make sure that you go in there and execute with a plan? Is that an area that would leverage your time? Is that an area that would accelerate you toward your vision? What's your present situation between the three areas of time that you could use? How are you doing with maintenance time versus high performance time and lifestyle time? In a program, volume number 2 in the Business Builder series, we get into these 3 different time zones, and we've prescribed a time system for our clients to make the most of their business opportunities, to get into money-making activity, to minimize the complexity and the stuff that's bogging them down, and to increase the quality of free time. It almost sounds like you can have it all, and in essence, it kind of is. So we've come up with a unique time breakthrough to make sure that you get to all the things that are important. How well are you using it? Is that an area that you could focus a new habit on? Following through. Doing what you say and finishing what you start. If you're an individual that's over-promising and under-delivering, you're probably inadvertently hurting your credibility and cutting off doors of opportunity. Is this an area that you may want to focus some new habits on? Follow-through can be a roadblock to creating what you want, because you must pay attention in business to what other people rely on you for. People continue to propagate new business to you and refer you based on your ability to do what you say. Is this an area of improvement for you? Is this an area that would directly aim you towards your vision? Time management. Again, blending time. But specifically, do you look at your calendar when you need to, and are you locating things in your calendar? I believe that when things are scheduled, they get done. So how are you doing in terms of scheduling things? Do you create a schedule for yourself? How often do you create a schedule for yourself? In business, you have 2 ways in which you spend your time overall. You work in your business and you work on your business. I found that people that tend to work in their business, they don't work on their business enough, they don't really grow. What happens is since simultaneously the need for working in their business and working on their business are going all together, that they become so overwhelmed by new opportunities that the consumption and details of these new sales, all these new growth opportunities, eventually become the means to their undoing because they can't service it all, they can't handle it all. So the consumption becomes overwhelming, and what happens is they cannot reach the money-making activities that got them there in the first place. This is something we call a systems archetype called limits to growth. And if you're caught up in this kind of structure, what you may need to look at is to the degree of how often you're working on your business. Simultaneously, while it's being overwhelming, it may require for you to take a step back and to work more on the systems and the stuff that's ultimately going to be your release and your clearance capability. What am I talking about? Delegating, systems, and creating a power team around you that you can have them take delivery of things that you don't do well. You can delegate out items that you really shouldn't be focusing on. This takes, first, how you structure your time. So as you're defining present reality, remember I said, what is the real truth? If you say, well, I'm overwhelmed, well, that's the symptom. That's not the root cause. Why am I overwhelmed? Well, I'm overwhelmed because I'm not delegating. Well, why am I delegating? Because I don't schedule time to work on my systems. Well, why don't I schedule time to work on my systems? Because it's not a priority to me. So as you distill down and peel the onion layer, you can use this tool. Why is that happening? And why is that happening? And why is that happening? Until you distill it down to almost like a fraction, you can't find another common denominator. You can't reduce it down to its lowest, simplest form anymore. You found basically what is causing the problem, what the root cause is, and now you can prescribe a strategy and address the real problem with corrective action. Obstacles are windows that you'll go through to create what you want. They're not paralyzing stopping points. They're springboards. They're current realities. How about your quality of rejuvenation? If you go home on free time and you're doing all the work around the house and your quality of recharging is poor, when you come back to your business, are you really going to have that clear mind? Are you going to rejuvenate your creativity? Are you going to be in the kind of condition to not only bring your best to your business, but also enjoy your business with an unending surplus of energy? Probably not. How are you using that time? Well, oftentimes I find that if an individual clears out their closet at home, delegates the lawn mowing, starts building their garage fixing program with other people involved, calling someone down the street, and going to work on some of the requirements at home, all of a sudden their business improves. So there's a direct correlation between your rejuvenation and recharging capability in other areas, and they tie directly into your business and what you bring it. Procrastination. You've probably heard about this over years and years. I have a different view of procrastination. Procrastination is very healthy. The reason we procrastinate is, one, because we have no one to delegate this item to. So in essence, procrastination is a form of delegation. I call it delegate to nothing. Procrastination also is usually because there's a lack of rejuvenation time. So it's like an engine overheating solution. It's like, gosh, I wish I could get away from what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force myself into staying away from what I'm doing. It's a repellent, in a way, of trying to get away of what it is that you really don't want to do. And it really comes from a lack of rejuvenation time. So when you describe your present situation, in contrast, describe how you're using your free time, how you're using rejuvenation, and what the source of your procrastination really is. And come to terms with the truth. You may, as a strategy, want to schedule procrastination because it's a necessary item. Daydreaming is very helpful to the mind. So is this type of procrastination. If you get on the couch and you're watching telly or something like that, maybe you want to schedule a couple hours at those times to do that because you still have the urges. Are you really correcting it if you miss out? Probably not. You still have the urges to procrastinate. So why not build it in and build in more recharge and rejuvenation time into your schedule? Values. Looking at your values and why things are so complicated, could this be a root cause of what's going on? Oftentimes people are overwhelmed because they want to have an impressive lifestyle and they want to gratify their impulses to have an impressive lifestyle. So what they do is they create very complicated obligations through big expenses, and their whole focus is on looking good and competing with their neighbors and friends and family. So basically they're driving around their net worth. And this can make life extremely complicated because you may be adding 4 or 5 hours on at the office just to have an impressive lifestyle. So it may mean that you revisit where your values really are and examine what's most important to you. Is it about creating a life that expresses your values, or is it about having an impressive lifestyle? I'd suggest running through the pros and cons of both and looking what the strengths and weaknesses are of each one of those and what it gets you. One of them is short-term, the other one is long-term. And there are causes and effect between workload and consumption and your values. Are your personal values conflicting with your ambition to be impressive to others? You may want to define that in present reality and be dead honest. How about setting limits and boundaries? Have you heard the expression, no thank you? Well, this is one of the most helpful expressions that you can do. Why? Because we bring overwhelm to ourselves by saying yes too much. Why do we often say yes too much? Because we maybe fear confrontation. Maybe that's the root cause. Or we want to be liked. Or we're afraid that a friendship will sever or go down in flames if we don't agree to it. What about setting boundaries and limits? If you don't have a vision to go after, the natural outgrowth of that is most likely you make poor decisions. You won't set boundaries as well because you don't have a place to go. So part of the visioning process will enable you to do that. Nevertheless, you might think about what personality flaws or traits you have that tend to have you give in the wrong moments. Tracking batting averages. One of the reasons that entrepreneurs do not advance their careers is they don't like to look at what's going on. For example, they do not like to look at what's in their checking account because they're afraid they might find out it's not what they want it to be. This is a very interesting illusion. It's a denial type mechanism. And if you look at the root cause of it could be that you fear looking at the truth. I suggest making a practice and discipline out of seeing the truth for what it is. And if you're too close to it, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, if your identity is married to your results, then of course you're not going to want to look at your checking account because it's a measure of who you are, as opposed to looking at it as a reference point to make decisions by. So look at where you're not tracking batting averages in your business, in your money. Where are you avoiding looking at what you need to look at? And maybe that's something you may want to change. So you make the proper adjustments and you move toward the desired state of affairs. Overcommitting and underpromising. Like I said, if you have a desire to be liked or you give in, you may tend to overcommit. And what ends up happening is we can create a lot of consumption and messes in our life. Things that we have to clean up, that people expected of us. Willingness to make sacrifices. Are you willing to make the necessary sacrifices for the long term? Or are you not willing to make sacrifices? Part of holding steady to what you want to create involves making several sacrifices, almost like there's two frames on the camera. There's a short frame, a zoom lens, and then there's a long wide-angle frame. The wide angle could be your vision. Short-term are the impulses and gratifications that you tend to run to. And one thing that happens is we, in our business, become firemen. You hear constantly, I am a mechanic. I'm always putting out fires. And I ask the person, how are you contributing to that? Part of it is they're running around handling whatever's squeaking the loudest. And this is another systems archetype. In other words, it's a system that has a natural cause and effect relationship that often goes invisible or unseen, and we get caught up in this fix. And if we fixate on whatever squeaks the loudest, what ends up happening is we may inadvertently avoid the kind of sacrifices that we need to make to hold steady to long-term decisions. For example, an angry customer. And if we go and do everything in the short term to handle that angry customer, there is a ballooning effect in other areas. We've got to make short-term decisions that make sense for the long term as well. Be willing to make sacrifices. It's almost like a squeaky wheel. If you're putting water on the squeaky wheel, it'll go away temporarily, and oftentimes we think we just need to apply more water, when what we're doing is we're ultimately exacerbating the problem. Instead, what we might want to do is look at how we can put the right oil on the leak and eliminate it forever. So there are short-term consequences and long-term consequences. See if you can articulate how you tend to operate there and look for some change. Hunting small. In the sales dimension and for entrepreneurs, a lot of times what we do is we combine what we know or we think is possible with our goal setting. And so what we do is we tend to think smaller, we hunt smaller, and we do things that we know we can do. And this is a very scary thing because what we're in essence doing as a root cause is eliminating disappointment. What I'm going to encourage you to do is to think bigger. It's not about whether you think it's possible, because if you've never done it, you don't really know. Separate what you know from your origination of your ideas. Mobilize yourself to go after those ideas by using your learning capability cycle that we discussed in the last piece. What you can do is learn from those actions, which will yield better actions. Hunt big and learn how to create it. You'll either learn or you'll create it. Now, I've mentioned a lot of habits here and personal tendencies, areas that I have found over the years that entrepreneurs tend to stick to when they're articulating present situation facts. Again, this is primer. You may have a lot more information about what you're actually doing that hinders or irritates your ability to release your vision to come into being. And if you ponder on those and reflect on those, I recommend that you pick a group of people that you could check in with on this stuff. Ask others who know you well if they observed the same things about you, and if they feel these are things that should deserve the kind of importance to actually change them. Why? Because personal change, remember, is high cost, low immediate leverage, long-term leverage. So check in with other people about what you see going on here. Remember, it's not the truth, the absolute truth. It's the truth as you see it. Your strengths. What superior strengths lend themselves to your goals? I've discovered that you can dramatically advance your ability to manifest your vision by applying this principle. Focusing your unique ability or your forte. Everyone has a superior skill set that they have a passion for. Have you endowed yours to the greatest degree? If you look at your calendar, how much of your time are you spending focusing your unique ability? Do you really know what it is? This concept can be an enormous centralizing concept for entrepreneurs so that they create a business that allows it and clears the way for it. But most of their business does not. You might ask yourself why it's not appearing. Probably because, one, you've never done any research on yourself to find out. And two, you don't have a system set up, you don't have a group of people, you don't have a business that's set up to really endow it as well as it could be. What is your unique ability? How much time are you spending on it? What's your knowledge of it? How do you do in delegating outside of it, in terms of areas that you're weak, areas that you're competent, and areas that you're even excellent at? Your unique strength here is an area that gives you energy, and that's the distinction. How much of your time are you spending on areas that give you energy instead of take it away? How well are you doing in this year to last year, comparing the two, to eliminating areas outside of your time spent on your unique ability? And this is an enormous area. This is a huge block, because when you spend time on your unique ability, you're focusing the kind of strengths that are your magnets. It's like a giant gravitational pull. The ratio of time that you spend on it directly impacts the results, the attraction, the opportunities that you attract. It is a giant accelerator. It's like a growth hormone for your business.